So in this video, I'm going to review my trade in LEGN, where I lost 0.2 hour on the trade. I'm going to review this trade on 6 criteria: my SA, position size, stock selection, entry, stop loss, and exit. So on the day that I bought LEGN, the SA was very bearish. The SPY had been going sideways for months, and my own portfolio had no traction. So I was playing defense, taking pilot-sized positions and selling into strength. In terms of my position size, I was only risking 0.12% of my total equity on this trade, which definitely was the right thing to do given the bearish situational awareness at the time of taking the trade. Now, the reason that I selected LEGN, let me go back to my tweet when I entered this, because this is where I journal all my reasons, which I can then go back and reflect on, like I'm doing in this video. So I noted that LEGN was a recent IPO that broke out of a big base. Refer the weekly chart, and this can clearly be seen here. It was also the fact that it's a recent IPO from the past few years is a huge positive. And it had a strong catalyst recently on this day when it went up a lot. The catalyst being that leaked documents show promise in 9.6 billion market. And as shady as it sounds, the reaction to the news is what really matters. And clearly in this case, this leaked document seemed to have some credibility because the stock traded, let's see, 9.1 million shares, even though its average is just a million every day. And it went up 20%. So there was definitely some smoke. There's some fire behind the smoke. And I put it on my list of earnings winners. Also, the fact that it had 2 days of follow through on really high volume was another huge positive. And this pullback was just coincident with the market. So look at the SPY during this time. It had also been in pullback mode, and LEGN was just pulling back along with it on really low volume. So everything was really constructive. And in terms of stock selection, I would give myself 10 out of 10. Now for the entry, LEGN for the past 2 days had been making this really tight pivot. It had been in this range, making the same highs and same lows for 2 days straight. And the idea was that, or at least my plan the previous night when I put it on my watch list, was as soon as it takes out this high from the previous 2 days, I would enter it. So let me show you what my thinking was at the time when I was entering it. Also, I noted in terms of stock selection that XPI was the strongest sector, and the Qs were going red to green after 3 days down. So that is just additional positives. And you can see this relative strength in this pink line as well. LEGN was outperforming the SPY, and the XPI, or the sector itself, was also outperforming the SPY pretty bigly. Channeling my inner Trump there. So as soon as LEGN broke out of this double top, I took an entry. Now I did note that the relative volume at that time was pretty low. It was minus 28%, nothing to write home about, pretty much the average of what it trades every day. So that was a slight negative in terms of the entry. And I put my stop loss at the low of day because this is a biotech. And the way that I trade biotechs is that I'm very, very risk averse in terms of holding them overnight. There is a huge gap down risk. Suddenly, if overnight data comes out that one of the drugs that this biotech company makes has been canceled by the FDA, or the data has not come out good, these stocks can gap down 30-40%, and you don't want to be caught up in that. So I never want to take these biotechs overnight unless I have a huge cushion. And that is one of my sell rules that I also discuss in my how I sell video. And the idea was that I'm going to take a tight stop at the low of day, and if it works, if it runs, gives me a good enough cushion by the end of the day, I would hold it. And if it doesn't, I'm going to sell it and get out. And that is exactly what happened. LEGN didn't really make a move until the end of the day. I didn't have much cushion. We can take a look at the 5-minute chart to see how it behaved all day. This was that double top that it broke out of. But even though it went up a little bit, it gave all those gains back and closed pretty weak midway through the range of that candle. I didn't have any cushion, of course. I was at a slight loss of minus 0.2 R. And since it was a biotech, I couldn't hold it overnight, so I sold it. I also noted this on Twitter. Okay, minus 0.3 R, same thing. And that was my exit. So even though you might think, okay, this was a losing trade and nothing much happened, I would give this trade a 10 on 10 because I followed all of my rules from SA position size, stock selection, entry, stop loss to exit. And even though it worked, and in retrospect, you could have said, oh, if you had held it, you would have had a profit of, 9%, 10%. Good trading is not about hindsight bias. That is just, looking at what the stock did later on and saying, you should have done this or you should have done that. When I'm reviewing my trades, the only thing that I want to look at is, did I follow my rules? And did what I do make sense given what was happening in that moment? And given what was happening on that day, at the end of the day, I absolutely followed my rules, sold it at the right time, did not take overnight risk in a biotech, which could have hurt me in a big way had it gapped down. And overall, this was a great trade that I would take over and over again. And if I took something like this 100 times, I would definitely come out net positive. Still, if there's something I'm missing, definitely let me know in the comments below. And if this trade review helped you, then definitely let me know too. But thank you.